Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Jordan Black from Ramp Metals. If you've been following junior mining in Canada, you've probably heard about Ramp Metals. The company was searching for some nickel, palladium, and copper in Saskatchewan this year, and they decided that they would go and raise some money, and they got just enough to do 4 holes. They decided that with one of those holes, they would go and they do a little bit of a wildcat hole, which is sort of a naked hole. They don't know what to expect, but they decided to do so because they saw some really interesting chip samples that said, hey, there could be gold here. In presto, like that, the company that was searching for nickel, copper, and palladium found gold. And I'm talking a pretty big, impressive hole, 73 grams per ton gold over 7.5 meters. And suddenly, like that, this nickel, copper, and palladium explorer becomes a gold company and one of the hottest stories in the Canadian junior markets in 2024. So, guys, I'm really excited to have Jordan on here. Enjoy the interview. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on today. How are you guys?
So, let's start with talking a little bit of macro. So just this week, the BLS announced that they were going to revise the 2023 job data to remove 818,000 jobs. We're starting to see that reflect in the markets a little bit. Now, you are a CEO of a gold exploration company. I got to ask, what's your read on the gold market right now?
Yeah, look, we started off as a nickel slash battery metals company and obviously transitioned to gold overnight. So I had to do a bit of homework, but I follow markets quite heavily. Obviously, our stocks are tied to that in some way. But Jerome Powell is actually speaking this morning, and it sounds like interest rate cuts in the fall are a lock. And right now, we're seeing gold rip over 2,500 and other high value stocks follow it. So I think he's setting the stage for a great commodity cycle here.
Yeah, it looks like we are at a 66% probability of a 25 basis point cut in September with a 35% chance of a 50 basis point cut. Now, you guys are a really interesting story, and I want to get into Ramp Metals, but I got to ask, what are you finding right now in terms of the investor market when you're talking to some of the institutional type investors and the people who are looking at gold deals? Are you noticing that there's a pickup in excitement in a junior name like you guys?
Yeah, definitely. Compared to call it the winter last year, going into the spring, the market was kind of at all time lows. Private placements were at all time lows. Ever since we hit that gold discovery, we started seeing not only our story pick up, but others pick up. And maybe the TSXV is kind of doing this hookup from the bottom from these 25-year lows, which is very interesting right now.
So let's talk about Ramp Metals. I think that this is a story that has caught the attention of what's left of the Canadian junior retail investor community after what's been a few rough years, we'll put it. And suddenly we got a story here that I think that there's a whole bunch of interest in and excitement in, of saying you guys probably made a pretty big discovery here. Walk us through the story here. You guys started out, I think, what was it, nickel, palladium? You guys
Yeah,
were after.
nickel battery metals, nickel copper PGs. If we go back to the history of the area, we're in the Rottenstone domain. There was the old Rottenstone mine that produced some of the highest grade nickel in the country at one point at 3.2%. And it also had these crazy kickers of copper. Some years they had like 6% copper and 10 grams per ton of PGs and gold. So we always thought maybe we'd get a sniff of PGs, but we never expected high grade gold like 75 grams per ton over 7.5 meters. Like that just blew us away. But starting from the beginning, we looked at regional data and we saw this interesting eye structure. So that's why we staked the property originally. And when we did our first seed round and got the geophysics done and EM data, it came back with this really nice magnetic eye with electrical conductors all around it and one big one in the middle. And we always thought it looked very similar to the Sirius resource Nova Bollinger in Australia. And that was founded by Mark Bennett and his team. So Garrett, our VP of exploration, he's like, you should show this to Mark and see if he'd talk to us. So I fired it off to Mark Bennett. That was last summer. And he called me up and he's like, I almost fell off my chair how similar the data looked. So we thought we had a very similar project to theirs. The structure was similar. It even striked in the same direction as theirs. And even though that doesn't really matter because it's across the world, right? But we had all these similarities that you would find in a nickel or a massive sulfide project. And then fast forward to the fall where we started cutting drill pads for our drilling exploration. And as we were flying over one of the smaller anomalies, the guys noticed there was bedrock outcrops there. So after we cut the main drill pad of a rogue target, we went back to Ranger and did some chip samples, bedrock sampling at surface, sent those off to the lab. And before we started our drill program, those actually came back at surface 5 grams per ton and 1 gram per ton. So we're like, wow, that's really interesting to find in these peroxenite host rocks, right? And so we decided to put a wildcat hole there. And fast forward to the end of the drill program, we're getting down past 50 meters, and this hole turns into almost like it looks like a granite countertop, and that's the running joke that we could always start a countertop kitchen company if we didn't find anything here, because we passed through like that massive sulfide layer, and then we got into this quartz diorite. But pleasant surprise, one Friday night we got a call or an email from the assay lab, and we got these crazy bonanza grades that we were just blown away. And you don't hit these type of grades very often, especially in North America. So we're quite pleased to transition to a gold company, and especially in these markets as we were talking about earlier.
I'm curious, what were you doing at the time that you received this call? Were you like, I imagine that this is a moment you're going to remember for the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely won't forget the moment. My parents actually live probably an 8 hour drive away from me, and they just happened to be in town that weekend. And I was having a beer with my dad on the patio when I got the call. Actually, it was a message from my geos, and they gave me the numbers in PPB. So it was a very long number. You got to divide it by 1,000, right? And I was just like, holy cow, this is crazy. And then I called them right away and said, like, is this real? And ever since then, we had to verify the data. We wanted to make sure our check standards were in place. And yeah, it was just a good moment that I'll probably never forget.
Did you have any sense that you had a hole like this from
The
just
only
looking at the
sense we
core?
had was that there was gold at surface, and that was very interesting. A lot of people pick rocks all the time, do surface exploration before they could even get funding for drilling, and they don't find 5 grams per ton at surface. So that was one hint. But when we were drilling, and the guys were skimming over the core because they were looking for massive sulfides, which are dark and bronzy coloring. So it they didn't really there was no tells in the core for gold because it was so fine grained. And we actually had to go back to the lab and look at it under a microscope to see like that fine grained gold.
How many holes was your drill program?
So we drilled 4 holes. Three went into the main Ranger conductor, and the other one went into Rogue. So just one hole into
So
the
so I'm imagining you and your team here. You guys raise an amount of money, and
yeah.
you got 4 holes, and you see these interesting chip samples, and you say, "Let's do a wildcat hole." How close were you to not drilling this hole?
Well, I guess it all depend how things were going out in the field. It was the middle of winter. We had some great weather originally, and then all of a sudden our pump froze, and we lost like 4 days of drilling time. Which actually we wanted to drill 6 holes and ended up only with four, and this was one of the last ones. So if things went worse on site, we wouldn't have drilled this hole, and we could have missed it completely.
So why Saskatchewan? We don't see a lot of exploration stories there in the junior markets. We see the odd ones, and but it doesn't seem to be as explored as some of the other areas. What was it about the region that attracted you to want to go do a greenfield exploration project?
Yeah, no, great question. So both our geos are born and raised in Saskatchewan. They worked for the majors there, and they've always wanted to make their own discovery in their backyard. So that was step one, why we partnered with our geos, and they're two of the largest shareholders as well. And then second is Saskatchewan is rated, I think, number 3 in the world by the Fraser Institute for best jurisdiction. So Saskatchewan's a top-notch place for exploration. Most people are looking for uranium projects, but with base metals and gold, it's really underexplored. There's still a lot of land open that you can go stake and try your luck.
How much of a staking rush has there been in the area since you guys announced this hole?
Yeah, look, as soon as we got the results, we went and staked all the trends that we felt were necessary to advance our project and make sure no one got, I guess, the good faults that we thought contained gold in the deposit. So we have a total of 30 to 33,000 hectares. And then if you look at the map now, I don't know if you could pull it up on the website later when you're actually putting this out, but if you look at the map, everyone's staked around us for kilometers. So now there's no land available near these drill holes. And actually, the Saskatchewan government probably made some decent money on all these staking fees.
So what's the next steps here? You guys, you hit a big drill hole, you raise some money. What's the, like, how big of a drill program are you guys looking to move forward with?
Yeah, so we raised just over 4.9 million from Eric Sprott, Earth Labs, and a few other strategic investors. So that money will mostly go into the ground. We're looking to drill somewhere between 4 and 5,000 meters, which could be around anywhere from 15 to 20 holes. We're gonna focus mostly around that Ranger target, but we're also gonna go drill a few other holes if we have time, because there's multiple anomalies on the project, and even at the rogue hole that's 3 kilometers away, we hit 1 gram per ton here and there around that site. And as we got below or really deep into the hole, past I think 150 meters, 200 meters, we hit really nice quartz veins and had silica flooding. So that rock actually looked more like you'd find gold there versus where we found it. So we have a very, as our geos would call it, a juiced site, and there's lots of work to do there.
Okay, so if I am an investor watching this, or I'm following the story, what am I looking out for over the remainder of the year in terms of potential milestones, catalysts, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so we should have some pretty good news flow coming. What we're waiting for our permits right now to go do our field mapping program. So we expect that in the next month. We're gonna send guys out for 10 to 14 days, really get a lay of the land because we've really only been out there for a couple days. As you were mentioning earlier, it was completely greenfield and no one really ever walked on this property probably for 100 years. And we really want to map out those bedrock faults and shear zones and see if we could get any other clues of where this mineralization is coming from. And then in the fall/winter, we're going to follow that up with that extensive drill program, 4 to 5,000 meters. So hopefully by the end of next month, you'll see us out in the field, following up with drilling and then assays, and hopefully we can keep the market pleasantly surprised.
Well, Jordan, I hope you'll keep coming back on here in the future because it seems like, fingers crossed here, you guys could be the next Great Bear type story that I think we kind of need in the Canadian junior markets to sort of lift all, as I say, a rising tide lifts all boats. And to see a story like yours have some success, I think is a really, really great thing for the Canadian junior markets. So we appreciate you hopping on here. And as you continue to expand on what you're doing, hopefully you'll come back on here and update our audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today. It was a pleasure, and let's keep watching that gold price too.
All right, everybody, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks, everyone.